Well, it's what is it? 4 o'clock on Friday. Yeesh. That took a lot longer than I figured it would, but I finished, I'd say, a large part of the wiring on this. There's just a few things left. That's for the fan on the front, and it's not connected at the other end. Down my cable management here, everything will move without snagging or without, like hitting the end. It looks like when the bed here is at the front that these cables are tight, but they're not. They're slack, and they will go all the way to the back without catching anything. So I think we're good there. Hotbed or heated bed is connected up. The extruder is connected up. Well, the only thing that's left to do on this thing, other than this little fan, which I have to print a mount for the fan itself and figure out where it connects to on the other end. Apart from that, the only other thing left to do is the end stops. Now, the Z-axis ones I can actually mount on the wood up here. I've actually got enough to do top and bottom, so I will. So you can get both extents, but most of them only give you 3, but the Sane Smart Kit actually did come with 6, so I'll use them. We'll see how we go. And unlike the motor wires, they give you a plenty long wire that shouldn't require any splicing. But yeah, the motor wires needed quite a bit of splicing, and that was a bit of a pain in the ass because I couldn't find any of my spools and wire, so I was cutting apart cables that I had that would have been good enough. Anyways, so now next step, well, I gotta calibrate this thing and test out the heated bed and test the extruder that it gets hot. Make sure that the thermocouples all work, like there's one right there in that hole. And maybe later today we will be running this thing. Well guys, so it's next day. It's, what is it, 12:15 on Saturday. And I've got all my calibration done. And I'm just going to try and extrude a cube here. Do my first thing here. Played around, got my calibration done for the extruder. I think that's good. That's just some of the goop that squirted out as I was calibrating it. But I just had a problem that was interesting, and that is that I started to heat up the bed to, I'll show you on the screen, as much as pointing a camera to a screen is a good thing. But, is it done uploading? Actually, before I do this, that's done uploading. I have to upload a change here that I'll tell you about. And basically, I was going to do this little cube here, just a calibration cube, but I had a problem with, once I started telling it to start the print, it started heating the hot bed. My LED came on, and then it went out. And I was like, what the hell? And I was waiting, thinking that, okay, is it doing some duty cycle thing? And I found out that one of the Polyfleet fuses here, this bottom one, actually, was quite hot. I checked it with my little thermal thing here, and it was 100 degrees Celsius. And no power was going to the hotbed anymore. So I have to go and tweak something in here, and we'll see if this works. Basically, heater bed duty cycle divider. So basically what this does is, so for 1 out of every 4 cycles, so 25% of the time, it's gonna turn the bed on, and then we'll see if it well, then it hopefully won't overheat. I guess I got a fairly low resistance bed, and it doesn't much care for that. So I uploaded that, and let's try starting to print again. So we'll see what happens here. I'll point the camera at it, and we'll watch what's happening. I don't have a tripod in the house, so won't do it for very long. But anyway, let's see what happens here. Well, it's staying on longer than it did before. Oh, I'm probably going to have a failed print here because two things I didn't do that you're supposed to do, and that is I didn't cover the bed with masking tape, nor did I cover it with Kapton tape, and nor did I coat it with hairspray. So I wanted to see what would happen, and I got a pretty good idea. It's just going to slide around on the glass, but I'm curious to try. So we'll give that a minute or two. Haven't blown the polyfuse yet. I'm seeing the bed temperature coming up to 41 Celsius. You can't see because of the light reflected on the screen. 42. Hasn't started heating the extruder yet. I guess it heats the bed first and then it'll run the extruder. So, something smelling like it's cooking. I'll just check this with my thingy here, and it's showing 44, showing 46 on there. Yeah, so a little bit of difference in the temperature, but the thermistor is in that hole underneath the bed, so it might be running a little bit hotter than the glass is, because the glass is going to take longer to heat up. Well, that seems to have fixed the polyfuse. So there's the first calibration item done. I think I had a bit of problems with the first few layers here. Something's going wacky with whenever the Z motors decide to do a rapid, they're puking out, so I'm having some problems there with that. That said, it seems to look like something, so I'm going to pop that off of there, which actually, bed is 49, so I probably shouldn't touch it, but nope. You know what I need is I need one of those little paint scrapers. Okay, well I'll pop these off and then have a look at them and see if they are what they're supposed to be. So, here's the first two pieces I printed successfully, and it's more or less successfully because there's a couple of issues here. You can see it looks a little bit mushed out on the base, and I'll explain that later. But the dimensions seem to be pretty close. According to this is, I took it off of Thingiverse. It's a calibration object. And looking at this, and the width should be 22 millimeters. I'm sorry for metric units, but that's the way it is. And it's 21.97, so it's, you know, 0.3 of a mil off, which is pretty tiny. I don't know the metric to English conversions that off the top of my head, but that's certainly is satisfactory to me. Measure this dimension, and it's supposed to be 20, and it's just under 19.92 if you can't read the screen there. This thickness here is supposed to be 6 mil, and it's 5.93. And this one here is supposed to be, I believe it's 20 long, and it's 20.02. And here it's supposed to be 10 wide, and it's 10.08. So it's pretty good accuracy there, and then things fall apart when we go to height. Height-wise, from what I'm able to tell, I think this is supposed to be 10 high, and it's actually just over 9. This one should be 12 high, and that's according to whatever, Repetier host. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but I believe that's right. It's supposed to be 12 mil high, and I'm getting pretty much a little over 11. Actually, it's not. It's saying 11.34, but I think it's closer to 11. Because I know that it was pretty consistent. Actually, I was putting it on a bump. There you go. That's what it's reading, you know, at a part where it isn't distorted. Because there was, when it stopped, and I don't know if it's supposed to do that or not, but when it stopped extruding, it stopped right there and left a little bit of a bump there, kind of a thing. Which is a little bit of a mess, but nevertheless. So it seems that I'm 1 millimeter less in height. And I did calibrate my Z, and what I think happened was the rapids, for some reason the rapids on my system, the rapid seeks that it was doing on the Z axis, and the motors weren't moving. It would just buzz and it would stop, it wouldn't move. And I don't want to tweak the current too much because these these knockoff Pololo drivers don't seem to be too... Well, the Z seems to be particularly sensitive because it's running 2 motors, and it didn't seem to like it too much. This one, I actually, if you're wondering why I removed this one, it was because it was sitting there, it was pulsing, and it was missing steps at a specific interval. Like every half second, it would lose steps. It would like freeze. The motors would freeze, and so I pulled this one out. I don't know if this one was overheating and timing out, or what the deal was with it. You know, because what they do is they have a thermal limiting, which will cut them off. But anyways, so I'm going to try this again. I've changed the rapids on the Z to a fifth of what they should be, just to see what happens. I'm going to try a print again. It's kind of tedious for me to set this up because I don't have any of my limit switches, so I have to kind of manually home it. And yeah, it's a cluster fuck. Let's just say it. It's a clusterfuck. Anyways, so let's get to this, and I'll show you the results after that. And then I'm going to post this video because this is probably going to get to be a pretty long video. I don't know if this thing is focusing or not, but that looks much, much better. Much better. But something is interesting there. I think you guys can figure that out pretty easily. I think I've got my y-axis inverted. So I started with my home position as being here, this corner, as I'm pointing off camera. This position over here where it is right now, and I think actually the assumption is that actual home position is right here. So I'll have to tweak that, but it shouldn't be too big a deal. I think the next thing I'm going to work on is my limit switches. So I'm going to pop this off, measure it, and let you guys know, and then I'm going to cut you guys free for a little while. Yeah, so I checked it, and the dimensions are as close as I think I reasonably could expect. You know, obviously the X and Y dimensions seem okay. They're, you know, roughly the same as what they were with the previous iteration there, you know, like probably off by less than 1/10 of a millimeter, which I think works out to maybe about 3 thou, which I think is pretty good. This piece right here fits into there quite nicely. I don't know that it necessarily had to. A little bit of a gap there, but I think that's just because there's some mushing in the corners. But in any case, thickness of this piece, 12 mil, within, you know, certainly 1/10 of a millimeter. Or sorry, what did I say? It's 12 millimeters thick, this big piece, within 1/10 of a millimeter. So that's roughly, you know, 3 thou again. Same again for this one. This one is roughly... it was just over 10 millimeters, and it's supposed to be, it was like 10.04 or something like that, so it's pretty close. The top is looking a little bit depressed, you know, like a little bit uneven. I don't know that that's inconsistent with what I'm seeing on some of the parts that Built Road it, wrecked it, went and printed for me. Not seeing any real sagging on that one, actually. Might be a bit thicker top on his one there, because you can actually see the honeycombing through that. In any case, so I'm satisfied with that. I think that's sorted out. So I just have to go and reverse my axis to straighten that out, and then I think the next thing I'm going to print is my end stop mounts, so I don't have to manually screw around with my end stops. Here's a couple of failed bits here. This was actually one failed print. It just kept popping off the bed. And in case you're wondering, what I'm using to make it stick to the bed fairly well is I'm using some of Vicky's hairspray. And that seems to work. Just gave it a good spray and it seems to work. So, and I just had that in there just to make sure that my spacing was reasonable. That's probably about a 3. Well, that's actually funny. That's probably my 3 thou right there, is the paper thickness between the bed and the hot end. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. I'm going to be printing a bunch of stuff today, see how we go. What is it? It's 3 o'clock. And I'm very, very happy with how this works. Once again, thanks to Ron, Built I've always have to think about it. Build, road, wrecked it. You'll see him. He'll comment in the thing there, but that turned out pretty nice. I think you can see, looks pretty good. You can see the layering, but absolutely, that's probably pretty close to perfection. Yeah, you can see actually in the camera that little bit of a depression in the middle of it. For the top layer, it sagged a bit. Okay, well, that's something for me to learn about. In any case, thanks for watching, guys.